Welcome to another episode of Open Mic. I'm Mike Morse with Kevin Dietz. Today, we have Ned Timmons, a former FBI agent, a former Oak Park police officer, someone who almost single-handedly started the chain to bring down Manuel Noriega. You're not going to want to miss this episode, so stay tuned.
Joining us this morning is Mike Morse and Detroit's Top 30. Mike Morse is in here to tell us about the backpack giveaway.
Adapt and change things up a little bit every year.
Hi, I'm Mike Morse. Welcome to another episode of Open Mic with Kevin Dietz. And today, I'm very happy to have Ned Timmons on the show. Welcome, Ned.
Thank you.
Ned is a former FBI agent, and he's got a really interesting past that I'm going to let him tell you all about. So let's turn to you. Thanks for being here today. So tell us, you grew up in Michigan.
Yes, sir.
What part of Michigan?
By Freeland, between Saginaw and Midland.
Okay, so not too far.
No.
Hour and a half away, about.
Yeah.
And you went to school up there. Where'd you go to college?
Hillsdale and Michigan State.
Nice. And then you entered the police force?
After Hillsdale was at the peak of Vietnam, and so, your number was up, and I volunteered for the draft and went to Korea with a CID, 2nd Infantry Division. That's a criminal investigating detachment of the Army.
Okay.
And I spent 13 months in Korea, 3 years in the Army, and got out and went to work for Oak Park Police.
Korea. That's a war you don't hear much about these days. I don't know much about. Can you tell me about the Korean War in about a minute or less?
Well, right now it's just it's like a Cold War over there. You got North Korea on one side of a line and South Korea.
Well, now I know what it is, but back then, what were you doing?
Well, we were always on alert. You never knew when some point of tension was going to blow up and something was going to happen. They were always threatening to fire missiles in. We had a lot of infiltrators coming in at night, and their goal was to spread drugs amongst the bar girls, who would then disseminate them to the American soldiers. And we ended up with while I was there, we ended up with over 10,000 soldiers in Camp Zama, Japan, for dry out and drug overdose problems. So it was like a sabotage. They would smuggle the drugs across the DMZ at night.
But that's what the war was about?
Well, no, it was the ongoing
conflict.
So
you were there for the ongoing conflict.
Yes.
Which side were you stationed on? Where were we stationed? In the south, right?
The south, yeah.
Right. You're not allowed in the north.
No, you're not allowed in the north.
See, I know something.
That was during the Vietnam War.
That's a big problem.
Right.
Yeah.
So you came back safe, and
Yes.
you decided to go into the Oak Park Police Department.
Yes.
What year was that?
That would have been about 72 or 3, right in there. And at that time, Oak Park was the highest paying law enforcement agency in Michigan.
So my dad went to Oak Park High School. It feels like it comes up on our
I know
podcast.
it keeps coming back.
At least 50% of the time. I'm in Oak Park. Often I live right near there. I was born in Oak Park. My first 5 years of my life was in Oak Park. They got great pizza in Oak Park, a Primo's Pizza on 9 Mile. That was there when you were there.
I know them very well, and they own Valari Restaurant now over in Wixom.
Okay, that I didn't know.
And they also have a carry-out place over there.
But how good is the pizza on 9 Mile?
Oh,
Primo's
excellent.
Pizza. Think about sponsoring our show, Primo's Pizza on 9 Mile.
You were probably still a little too young to be getting in trouble from him as an officer in '73.
I was 6.
Yeah, probably.
We ate 2 or 3 times a week. The guys would order from Primo's.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
I know I've met the people who are running it and owning it now. Nice people, good food. But so you had a good experience in Oak Park. Probably a safe time to be in Oak Park back then.
Yeah, we had a lot of action. We were police, fire, and rescue, and that's why we were paid premium. We did all 3.
Wow.
And there was enough going on with stolen cars and break-ins and holdups, and kept you interested.
Okay. And then I see here you went to the FBI after that.
Yeah, while I was at Oak Park, I got a master's out of Michigan State, going to night school. And then finally in 81, I got an appointment to the FBI Academy.
Wow. I don't know what that means, an appointment.
Well, you go through a grueling multi-year scrutiny of your background and polygraphs and everything else. And,
oh, wow.
And finally, you get word, if you're lucky, you get word that they're going to take you into a class.
And they did? And you got your badge.
There you go.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
And so tell us what it's like to be an FBI agent and what kind of work you did.
Well, they gave me a lot of latitude, I think, because I'd been in the military and with the police. And I started out with bank robbers and fugitives. And on that squad, I ended up catching a motorcycle gang fugitive who had been on the run for over 5 years.
How'd you catch him?
Put a gun to his head and walked him out of a bar out east side of Detroit.
Was it? Were you at the bar having a drink and you saw him, or did somebody give you a tip that he was there?
No, we got a tip that he was there, but the picture we had of him was like 5 years old.
Could have happened either way, though, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You kind of look like you could be in a motorcycle bar. Are you allowed to say his name, or would I know his name, or is the name irrelevant?
I'd rather not use his name.
Fine.
He's dead, but
fine.
Anyways.
So you put a gun to his head. How much backup did you have when you put a gun to somebody's head like that?
I had one guy with me.
So that's the old days.
And
Now these days they'd have 30 guys.
Yeah, right. They'd be storming in.
You know,
Yeah.
you're like an old school FBI agent.
I'm guessing he probably had a gun too,
He
or
did.
one nearby.
Yeah. And the bar was full of bikers. And so we walked him out of there, and we got to our car that was out in the parking lot with him, and before cell phones, you know. So my partner got to the phone booth and dialed 911 for the cavalry, and because all the bikers started coming around the edge of the bar with guns, you could see shotguns and long rifles, and so I got him between the rest of the bikers and me. My partner was on the phone to 911, and they were moving in on us, and my partner had just come from law school, and he had a Chief Special 5-shot snub-nosed .38, and these guys have all got pump shotguns and whatever, long
That doesn't
guns.
seem like a good fight, a fair fight.
No.
So what happened?
Well, in the distance, in the mist, I could see a state trooper coming with that red light, and it was like the most exhilarating sound.
Exciting
The
red
siren-
light.
The siren was coming, and and there was a couple blue lights coming behind them, and the other side decided they were going to be outnumbered real fast, so
They backed off.
they backed off. Yeah,
And you got your man.
we got him. Yeah.
And did something special happen with this particular arrest that changed the history of the world?
Well, it did. We worked with this guy. He had no choice. He'd done time in 7 federal penitentiaries, and he was going back for habitual offender, plus he had charges for guns and bombs down in Kentucky. And so we had him over the barrel, just so to speak. And he ended up introducing me to another biker that was in trouble, and we climbed a ladder, and eventually we were introduced, or I was introduced to an individual that played a major role in this drug cartel operating out of the Cayman Islands. We started placing phone numbers together, phone records and calls and travel, and decided to move on this third biker that was connected to the Cayman cartel.
Bring me to what period of time are we talking about? 70s, 80s?
We're talking about 83, 84.
Okay. I was still in high school, but keep going. So
War on drugs has blown up at this point, right? This is
Yeah.
crack cocaine is kind of starting to go crazy.
Yeah.
Marijuana is still illegal, and there's huge shipments going back and forth, but mostly probably cocaine, I would imagine, right?
Actually, these guys were mostly the weed, and they would do shrimp boat loads of 40 to 60,000 pounds. They would do barges anyways from 130 to 500,000 pounds, but they would always throw in a couple thousand kilos of coke.
What kind of street value is that?
lots,
Millions.
Lots.
Hundreds of millions.
Hundreds
So,
of millions.
but the boats were going from where to where?
They were going from Colombia. They'd go to Colombia to Panama, and then they'd wait until they decided whether to shoot them up to Louisiana or the Carolinas, and that was based on where the AWACS were flying and where the Coast Guard cutters were, and all that intelligence would come back to the drug cartels, and based on that intel, they would decide which way they were going to run the barges or the shrimpers to try to get them into the U.S.
And then from whatever port they got into, it would get to Detroit and get to wherever?
All the drugs were exclusively transported on 8 Mile Road to Detroit in a construction site there.
And then shipped
Wait,
around
wait,
the
wait.
country from
Hold on,
there.
I'm confused. It went from Colombia to Panama, Panama to a port on probably the southern coast of the United States.
Yeah, southern or eastern, yeah.
And then how to get from there to 8 Mile?
Tractor trailers.
So you got to have a lot of tractor trailers to pull that kind of weight.
They did. They got them from the Teamsters.
So you're talking dozens of trucks?
You're talking 30, 40,000 pounds a truck. And they were load they called the Bulldog had 300,000 pounds. They got a Master Blaster load that had 500,000 pounds. They had another one they were planning with 1 million pounds.
One truck?
No, barge.
Oh, one
Barges,
barge.
Yeah.
So the barges load up into the Teamsters trucks. The
Yeah.
Teamsters trucks bring them to 8 Mile.
Right.
And where on 8 Mile do they go?
They went to Waterway Construction
Which
on
is
8 Mile.
Which is where? 8 and what?
Like 8 and Lasher area.
That's not far from here.
I
We're
imagine
talking
it's-
3 miles from where we're sitting right now.
Yeah, and they were bringing in hundreds of thousands of pounds.
So were they going to any other city in the United States or just Detroit?
No, they would distribute it to Los Angeles, New York, Texas, Colorado.
Okay, so we
all
weren't
over the US.
special.
We were a shipping hub.
A safe landing site.
Yeah.
So why do you think they picked Detroit as one of the few safe landing sites?
They needed a warehouse, and they had some connections in Detroit with a major distributor in the organization, and so he was more comfortable to bring it.
In the drug organization?
Yeah, to bring it to Detroit and then distribute it out from there.
Did any Teamsters ever get in trouble for carrying drugs for him?
Yes,
Anybody we know or anybody we heard of?
probably not.
Okay. But okay, so all these drugs, hundreds of thousands of pounds of drugs are coming to this 8 Mile, and then where does it? And then from there, it gets distributed around the country.
Yes,
Okay, so you helped uncover this operation,
yes. Yeah, I worked 5 years on it.
and so take us through some of the, how I mean these are very big numbers, and it's a crazy story. I don't know how to.
It's as big of a marijuana drug operation as you've ever seen. I mean,
Right.
It's the
that's ever been
biggest-
reported on.
So what happened?
Well, at the same time as these barges and shrimp boats were coming in, they had an aviation wing, and these were the same pilots that were flying for Ollie North in the Contra deal. And we had one pilot that we could prove he flew over 200 flights into Michigan of drugs from Colombia nonstop to Michigan.
Okay, you proved that, and then got him arrested and got him convicted.
Well, we made our move to go into the Caymans, and as far as I know, it was the first time they had an FBI agent work undercover offshore. That's CIA turf or DEA. But the source was willing to introduce me as a cousin, and so he was destined for witness security. But he introduced me into the Cayman Islands. It was a good time. They had lost a couple key people in the drug organization.
So you were undercover as a potential drug dealer
As a security specialist.
to work for the drug dealers.
Yeah.
And so it was just you alone?
Yes.
So what was your day-to-day like?
Yeah. So what did you do? Did you go scuba diving in the Cayman Islands? Tell me,
No,
what does that look like? You're undercover security specialist for the drug dealers. I mean, take me through your days.
Well, it's stressful, and you'd be up because you're nervous. You're not sleeping in. You're up 7, 8 o'clock in the morning and having a coffee. And there was a lot of other people involved that would come and go and whatever. And the particular guy that I worked for owned a club down there, and he would get a lot of business off the cruise ships. In other words, he'd advertise about a Caribbean barbecue and had Jamaican cooks and everything, and so you would have a lot of people from the cruise ship coming in. But they were also using that because his employees had to go on and off the cruise ships. So when they did that, they would take footlockers of money that was destined for Panama. But we had money down there. We had pallets of hundreds that was 5 foot by 5 foot by 5 foot. And the money was so abundant that we had to go to weighing the money. It would burn the engines up in money counting machines.
I've seen movies. I've seen shows like Narcos. I mean, I remember the pallets and they burned them. There's a movie where they burn all this money just because they can. I mean, so you lived through some of the stuff that we've all been watching on TV and Netflix.
I did, yeah.
And so in the Caymans, you're working for this guy for how long did it take to gain his trust and to be, inside?
I was around a couple of weeks with him, and we hit it off, and he still talks to me every day, or every week.
So this person was never brought down?
Yeah, he went to prison.
He did?
Yeah.
For how long?
He did 10 years because he testified against Noriega.
And so you, without backup on the island, right? You single-handedly infiltrated this guy. Are we allowed to know his name?
His name was Lee Rich.
Okay. And he pled guilty, he served about 10 years.
But he agreed to testify for the Kerry Commission. And that was what built the evidence that it took to turn the tide to go ahead and okay the invasion of Panama and to take down Noriega. And several other smugglers. Which is
huge.
Yeah, you'd say that.
And that was in the late 80s, 88-ish?
Yeah, in there.
And so what was the connection? What was Noriega do? Refresh our memories. I know he was a bad guy, and
from a media standpoint at that time, it was in all the papers, all the networks were covering this thing. They're like, is Noriega helping ship drugs into the United States? And he was, of course, denying it. And there's some allegations that Reagan was maybe too soft in allowing shipments to go back and forth, right? Noriega was able to protect drug dealers coming in. Now, those were the allegations. That's what everyone was talking about. And when these indictments came down, everybody was like, oh, we're going to finally find out, who the real players are in the war on drugs, and it might just be the government. It was kind of this whole huge, massive media circus.
So what was it? What was Noriega doing?
You had many factors going on now. One, these pilots that were involved in this organization, they were flying for Ollie North to supply the Contras. And during the course of this undercover project, we developed information that the same pilots that were flying the guns and weapons into the Contras what they were actually doing was they would load up with the weapons either in New Orleans or Miami or wherever they got loaded up. They would head for the Contras, would be in Honduras or wherever the meeting was. We found out that they were actually diverting to San Andreas, a Colombian island off the coast of Nicaragua. They would unload the weapons there and load up with air conditioners, blue jeans, washers, dryers, appliances they could sell. And the generals wanted to make money in the black market. They did not, as it was told to me later by one of the concubines for the generals, they didn't want to be in the jungle fighting. They wanted to sell air conditioners and appliances and make money. So this group of pilots from our drug organization would drop all the weapons in San Andreas, load up with all the air conditioners and TVs and appliances, fly those in. The generals would sign off that they got the weapons. And then on the way out, they would stop in San Andreas again, load up with the drugs that were payment for the weapons by the cartels, and fly the drugs into the U.S. They came in under the nose of customs because it was a CIA operation, and they weren't allowed to search the planes.
But allegedly the CIA didn't know any of this.
Allegedly, but you got to go back to another angle on this, that Noriega was a source for the CIA. He's dead.
Yeah.
Okay. Noriega was the connection to Castro, and Castro to the Russians. So there was a lot of tension in the undercover project because the CIA didn't want us to take down Noriega. So you had to watch your back, so to say. CIA is interested in their global objectives or whatever, but they wanted to protect Noriega because he was their man into Castro. So another problem.
And of course, Pablo Escobar is running around trying to grow his drug organization in this circle as well, who's kind of a dangerous guy.
Yeah.
Well, the people who have seen the Narcos popular show on Netflix, that's this time.
Yes, that's
right?
exactly
that's
that time.
That's it's in Panama.
Right. They were
the first season.
I mean, you were involved in explosions at a hotel, right? I mean, that was all part of this effort, right?
After the FBI, I went to Colombia as a private contractor. The sources that I had developed were Colombians, and they were polygraphed by the CIA and deemed loyal to me. So I went into Colombia for a project. The trouble is I walked right into the drug wars. And that was a situation where the Colombian government had finally knuckled under the U.S. government and agreed to endorse extradition. In other words, they were going to allow fugitives, Colombian citizens that were fugitives from U.S. indictments, to be extradited. Well, Pablo and Rivas Gacha and other Colombians got together and they basically blew up the country. They were blowing up everything. I was in the Cartagena Hilton when they blew that up. I was in the Prada Hotel when they put a car bomb at the front door. And a couple months later, I was in a restaurant in Barranquilla and they blew that restaurant up. There was shooting every night. There was bombing every night. And it was a violent time.
How did you? You have 9 lives. I mean, how do you?
Sounds like they were targeting you, Ned.
It does sound like a narco show because there's lots of
car bombs and
stuff.
Yeah. The politicians traveled with their own medical units. They would travel with doctors, their own blood, and a team of nurses because so many of them were getting shot.
That's crazy.
It was crazy, yeah.
So you went over there as a private citizen to make money and this is your business. You wanted to help security.
I went as a private contractor.
Private contractor for security purposes.
Yeah, you can't go in as a sworn agent because you have to tell the government who you are, where you're staying, what you're doing.
Well, you were retired at that point.
I left early, yeah, and took this job.
You left the FBI early to become a private contractor over there.
Yeah.
And a private contractor means
you're not there.
You don't have to follow the rules.
Yeah.
I'm confused.
Well, government officials, if you go in.
I understand, but he was still working for the government?
As a contractor. So they didn't have, it's like a layer of protection.
I lost that. That
went
over my head. So you didn't go over there to make money. I mean, you weren't a private, I got confused. You didn't go over there because now you're a private contractor too, protecting people and doing covert stuff for them. But then you were still working for the government, but you weren't a sworn FBI agent because then you could fly under the radar and infiltrate whatever you needed to infiltrate.
Right.
Did I say that right?
Not bad.
Kinda?
Not bad for an attorney.
Right.
What strikes me is I'll take you all the way back to like the motorcycle guy in Detroit, right? So you get this bust and you think, wow, this is a great bust. This guy's doing a lot of drugs in Detroit or whatever. But then he's able to turn you over to another guy, and all of a sudden you're in the Caymans in this massive boatloads of weed getting shipped to Detroit. And then, but that's not all. There's more. There's still Noriega behind that. And we were talking before off camera. You were saying like you didn't know, in the Contras, but you. Like you didn't even know they were talking about Noriega because they were calling him Pineapple Face or whatever, and you're just like it's like every day there's this like new door opening of that making this a bigger and bigger case. I mean, I think it's probably still today the biggest drug enforcement investigation of all time.
Well, what was unique was that once the main guy in Cayman endorsed me, then all the other satellite people that were bringing in small loads, 500 keys of coke, 1,000 keys, 250 keys, 1,000 pounds of weed, wanted to get to me. And we had undercover phones and everything. And
wanted to get to you for what?
To help.
To help
bring the loads in.
To the United States.
Right.
He was a trusted security guy for the drug dealers. So they wanted to work with him because he was successful.
But you don't have phones at this point, or you do have phones. Like, how are you getting your information?
Hardwire phones. You'd leave a number where you could be reached.
So are you taking pictures of what you're seeing?
We had at Steinbrenner's Hotel in Tampa, we had 3 or 4 rooms wired. In other words, with pinhole cameras, audio, video, the works, and we'd set up the meetings at that hotel. And we literally would have people waiting in the lot to come in because we were so busy.
Wait. So you left the Caymans to go to Tampa
Yeah,
during this time,
yes.
and you were security. So your boss would be there with you.
No, I was.
You took care of it for your boss.
Yeah.
So you met with all these other drug dealers.
Yeah.
And what were you doing? Were you negotiating prices, negotiating sales?
Yeah, price and cost. You know, they wanted people killed, and you know, we had cost, to eliminate people, and
Logistics.
yeah. And
Well, did you participate in that? And
we didn't kill anybody.
You
no.
didn't kill anybody?
No.
Not that it'll tell me on my podcast. But wait a minute. But you're facilitating drug sales. Those drugs actually did probably get into the market, some of them.
No, we took them all down.
But didn't in the TV shows I watch, the FBI has to at least, show some due diligence for the drug dealers to get some drugs on the market, and then eventually they make the big bust. You're saying that even the smaller loads, you didn't let anything go,
No, we took them all down.
and they didn't ever look at you and say, "Hey, there's got to be a rat in this organization."
We always found a way to lay it back on them that somebody in their organization leaked it.
And how long did this operation last? I mean, how many months or days or weeks were you, playing this double-sided thing?
I was in Cayman in May of '85 and July of '85, and then back and forth, and then we probably did a year of this hocus pocus with meeting with other drug dealers and recording them all, videotaping them all, and taking down payments to bring in loads of drugs. In other words, we would control like an offload hole, they call it, which would control the site that they wanted to land a ship or a sailboat or whatever, for a shrimp boat load, whatever it may be, of drugs.
So you told them it's safe, come. They came,
Yeah.
you arrested them, took the drugs.
Well, we'd always have some story that they swallowed. That,
Yeah, but if I were them, I would say this guy is not very successful. This security guy, every deal that he puts together,
Doesn't
there's
make
a
it through.
problem.
Yeah.
Screw this guy.
yeah.
Well, they're getting,
But how-
they're
I'm
getting their
cu-
money, I take it. Were you guys sending money back?
No, we had to turn all the money into the FBI.
Wait,
So
is it all the money? Oh, wait a minute. All right. You could tell me that off camera. But no, but none of. I mean, it's surprising the word didn't get back that this was not a successful situation. I'm stuck on that.
Or that you're able to get all the way up to Noriega that quickly?
It was going fast, very rapid, and we pulled it off. That's all I can say.
Which is an amazing story. I was just trying to. So how did it tie back to Noriega? Was he just a terrible, terrible dude? And was he in charge of the? I mean, not charge. Was he? What kind of fingers did he have in the drugs?
Well, this organization had a house over in Farmington Hills where they counted the money on Farmington Road.
Which organization?
The Cayman organization.
The Cayman organization, which isn't the Noriega organization,
Yes.
or it is the
All of
Noriega.
one, yeah.
It's the same thing
Right.
in Farmington Hills. I grew up. I went to high school in Farmington Hills. It
you
could have
go.
been a neighbor.
You could have been a counter.
I
You know?
could have been a counter.
Yeah.
They probably paid better than my waiting table jobs.
So
Keep going though.
they would load the money up in boxes and they'd fly it out of Willow Run Airport nonstop into the Cayman Islands, right to the windows loaded with money. And the U.S. was putting pressure on the Cayman banks at that time to account for money, and the Caymans felt the pressure, and it was becoming harder and harder to bring in hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars into the Cayman banks. Cayman is the 7th largest banking center in the world, counting New York, Hong Kong, etc. Their banks couldn't handle the money they were bringing in. So they had to look for another avenue to clean their money or put it someplace. And they developed a contact with a colonel that worked for Noriega, and he introduced them to the general. They flew down with briefcases full of money for Noriega, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and he agreed to take care of them. And the smugglers had a really nice G2 jet, and Reagan was hosting the Say No to Drugs conference at the White House. And Noriega was invited, of course. They invited all the Latins. Well, his jet wasn't nice enough to show up with the other presidents, so he borrowed the smuggler's jet to fly to the Say No to Drugs conference.
A little irony there.
Yeah, yeah.
And nobody picked up on it.
And nobody picked up on it. And I had pictures of the other smugglers, the pilots who were flying for Ali, in the White House with Reagan, with Nancy Reagan, holding their dog. And so there was definitely a security breakdown there.
How come this guy hasn't had a TV show made about him yet?
I know.
We could produce it.
We should. And ultimately, between the planes and the ships and the trucks and all of that, they indicted and convicted 300 people
And
as a
convicted them
result. 300 convictions as a result of what started with this motorcycle guy.
I mean, is that true? I mean, you really think that had you not arrested that guy at that motorcycle bar in Detroit, the story you told us at the beginning of this show, that none of this would have happened? That Noriega would never have been gotten caught?
Well, it probably would have been another way, but
I mean, this was in your
This was
experience,
the trail.
This was the impetus.
Yeah.
This is what led you to the Caymans, what led you to Noriega. And were you were you still active when they invaded Panama in 88?
Yeah, I left in 89.
Did you participate in the invasion?
No, I did. There were smugglers that had escaped Panama, that were in Panama, that called me and provided me information where Noriega was, that I forwarded to the military. Because the smugglers knew where he was hiding in a church way out on the outskirts of town.
And they found him.
Yeah. But this organization in Cayman was so cautious. We went in there originally to sweep their facilities. In other words, look for bugs and everything. And I had all that equipment with me. And they wouldn't let, if you had a girlfriend or a wife or whatever, you could not bring her to Cayman. Because I always figured somebody's going to get divorced, the girls are going to talk, somebody's going to get in an argument with a girlfriend and she's going to know too much. So to entertain the boys, they had a contact with a certain therapeutic assistant in Tampa. And they would send the jet and fly down 10 to 12 of the most beautiful girls in the world to the Caymans to party. And you weren't allowed to know anybody's name or nothing. They were strictly there for physical therapy. So one day, I got tasked to pay the bill in Tampa.
For the physical therapist?
For the therapist, yeah.
Okay.
So
while you were in Tampa?
No, I was back in Cayman.
Okay.
They sent me from Cayman to Tampa with $250,000 to take care of the bill.
That's a lot of money for physical therapy.
They were good.
They
so
were
to
worth
speak,
it.
okay.
Not that you would know.
No,
but if you had to know, they were worth $250,000. Is this a day, a week?
Just from looking, yeah.
How long were they down there?
I was very careful never to partake because I didn't want to be sitting on the stand and have it come up. So I always came up with an excuse that I had to do something.
So who paid that bill? Where'd that money come from, the $250,000?
Some pallet sitting around in some garage, Farmington Hills.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
How much money, what do you think the most amount of money you saw at a single time?
I saw a pallet that was 5 by 5 by 5 that was all U.S. hundreds.
What would you guess that might be? Any idea?
No idea. I didn't know.
Enough.
Yeah,
these are some crazy stories. So, are there any? I mentioned Narcos. You told me off camera you haven't seen the full series. Is there a show, a movie right now? If people wanted to get more information, wanted to see documentaries or just even other types of TV shows or movies, is there anything out there that really does a good job of depicting what you went through and what happened during the mid and late 80s?
I don't know. I heard that Tom Cruise Made in America or something was pretty good.
Okay.
I knew some of the people that they portrayed in there. I knew Barry Seals.
That was the pilot part of it, right? That's where they're flying the drugs in and the money back.
There's a select crew of mercenary pilots. And ironically, these are descendants of Air America from Vietnam that were smuggling the heroin. And
How much money did those guys make, the pilots?
I don't know. It was pretty secretive. I don't know. But
What were they paying you?
Pretty dangerous work.
They had to be paying you something as a security expert.
There was a box of money. I was in a condo, and there was a box of money, and it would be replenished every day. And you just took a handful of whatever you needed for the day.
But weren't you getting paid for your services? Is that
Yeah, but it all had to be turned in.
you're an honest dude?
Yeah, you can get in big trouble.
So
You'd need a good attorney.
did you ever? We got that. We got you covered. Did you ever see, even from a distance, Noriega?
No. Oh, there was when this went down and these guys all lawyered up. Oh my God, there's attorneys that are still thanking me that
Cashed in.
Well, the attorneys made a lot of money,
millions.
but are you ever afraid for your life that any of these people that you helped put away were going to come back after you?
Most of the top people still talk to me.
Why?
Some kind of bond. I don't know. I found that with the motorcycle gangs too. That when you develop a relationship, a bond, or whatever, even though they go to jail and come out, they still stay in touch with you.
So the guy that you told us about from the Caymans who did 10 years, you gave us his name. You told me that you still talk to him once a week.
Yeah.
So I don't understand that bond.
Was he stunned? Was he stunned to find out you were law enforcement?
Yeah, I wasn't there when he got arrested, and they took him to Louisiana, and then I flew to Louisiana for something and met him in jail. Yeah, so
That's when he found out you were law enforcement. Or does he still not know?
yeah, no.
Maybe he's a subscriber, one of our
It's kinda
25,000
interesting
subscribers.
Because as we became friends in Cayman and built a relationship, I saw the stress that he was under and what he was going through, and one day we're sitting at sunset at his magnificent home on the ocean, and I said, why don't you just quit, take the money and get out? He just says, they won't let me. The Colombians will kill me. They'll kill my family. The investors will kill me. You made $4 on a dollar in like 60 days when you invested. And said the Colombians won't let me stop.
And this guy was American?
No,
He was
Cayman.
And where does he live now? What
I'd rather not
country?
say.
State. United States, Caymans.
And as we talked, he just said, if you hadn't arrested me, I'd be dead. He said, that was the only way I could stop.
Oh,
is to be arrested.
interesting.
Yeah.
So you saved his life. So he thinks.
Maybe.
That's.
But people were being killed every day at
yeah.
this time.
Yeah. It was a massacre in Colombia.
So the bottom line is you're not afraid for your life. You haven't been afraid that any of these people are going to come back and try to harm you.
No.
In your company, you still go into these dangerous zones to protect other people now, business people.
Yeah, we do Colombia, and we're doing a big project in Venezuela right now, which is just out of control. They're just shooting everybody down there, kidnapping them. They won't even rent you a car because everybody rents a car, they steal it. And
so somebody, what kind of people are? I mean, I know you probably can't tell me your clients, but give me a hypothetical scenario. What you're doing these days in Venezuela?
This is an attorney based in Miami that is dealing with some corporation. They're dealing with the Venezuelan government and oil companies and whatever. And he's going to be in there for on and off for a year.
And he wants you to keep him safe.
Yeah.
How many people does it take to do that down there?
Well, we basically pay off the police so that they're on our side. And then I have my people that have worked for me for over 30 years in there that, we'll put a armored car, 2 bodyguards, and a motorcycle.
Do you want to do some law work down
That's
in Venezuela?
Intense. Nope. I don't think they have good personal injury laws down in Venezuela. I think I'm sticking around Detroit. That's some interesting stuff. So are you going back and forth personally, or are you arranging everything from up here?
We arrange everything from up here.
So you're not traveling much
No.
down there?
Well, I go to Cayman Monday, but...
What are you doing on Cayman, to see your boy? I tricked you. See that?
He's not there.
Sure.
No, we're working on the podcast.
Oh yeah. So tell us about the podcast. What's coming up in your future?
Okay. Well, I've spent years putting different books together and information on this. I mean, I've got stacks 3 feet high of different manuscripts, and a accomplished journalist, Jake Halpern, Pulitzer Prize winner and author of many, many books. He was hired by a studio out of Los Angeles called Stowaway Productions. And we've spent a year traveling around interviewing all the smugglers, motorcycle guys that are around, ex-agents that worked on the Noriega case, and recorded everything. And we'll be in Cayman next week. We've got to do 5 more interviews of smugglers that are back in Cayman now. And, we take them from the first time they sold drugs to when they got arrested.
Why are they talking to you?
They like me. I don't know.
Well, you're a likable dude, but these are ex-smugglers.
Yeah.
They're not current smugglers.
Not that I know of.
First of all, so you have not written a book yet. You've not made a movie, TV show, series, nothing yet.
No.
So
yes. What movies to watch to learn this? I think they're making it.
So, do we have a name for the podcast yet?
It's not out yet, but I'll
Get
it to you.
Yeah,
it's going to air April 20th. It's scheduled to go, and there's still the Brain Trust is still working on it.
Is it audio, visual?
Audio.
And do you know what network? You mentioned the studio, but you don't know the network. All right, we'll get that. We'll get that to our people.
There's some podcast company that's behind it. I'd have to get it for you.
Where you get your podcasts?
Apple. But this is
Stitcher.
fascinating. I mean, I'm excited to listen to this.
Yeah.
So,
well, Jake Halpern's the real deal.
Yeah.
This guy's,
But I have a question.
Ivy League school taught and trained and author and.
So I have a question. The drug smuggling and the drug business back in the 80s compared to today. Do you have your finger on the pulse of what's happening today in that world? I mean, is it still happening? Is it 10% of what it was, or give me a sense of what's happening today?
Well, it started back in the late 70s and early 80s. They shipped everything by ship. And the guy behind that was a Colombian named Julio Nasser, Lebanese guy, but Colombian. And he was in charge of all transportation off the north coast of Colombia. You didn't move any drugs without going through him. And then gradually, they started knocking the ships off and stuff, and they went to the air wing. And then they went to cocaine because more money, less weight, quicker. And they were flying nonstop into the U.S. They were flying to the Bahamas and then into the U.S. But then the U.S. got up to speed with the AWACS and with the blimps and everything. And now they've kind of gone back to shipping. Julio's dead, by the way, but these guys were so sophisticated that they would take, the AWACS were based out of La Guaira, Venezuela at that time. They would take some of the most beautiful Colombian women, which are unbelievable, and place them in La Guaira, Venezuela at the bars, posing as legal secretaries, nurses, professionals, dressed to the nines, and they would keep track of the AWACS pilots. If the pilots were in the bar partying, they would call back and give the okay to fly or take a ship out. But if the pilots weren't there, they would shut everything down in Colombia, hold it at the coast.
That's a pretty
24 hours, no
cool.
Bottle to throttle if you're a pilot.
Right.
So you
cool.
can watch their clock by that.
They had a control center that I got into. I was with one of my Colombian buddies, and we were duck hunting and got hit by a real bad storm, and we had to go into this place between Barranquilla and Cartagena, and kind of walking in this ocean, brackish water and somewhere, and it was the control center that assessed all this information coming in from Panama, information coming from the ships, Colombian ships out at sea, fishing boats out at sea, of where the cutters were they seeing any airplanes, were they seeing, all that came in, and they had it on big boards up on the wall, as to the intel on where the U.S. forces were.
Wow. So how is it today? I mean, are the drugs a lot less than it was? Are they still coming in?
They're still here. You know, there was a time undercover I was paying $80,000 a key. Now it's about $40,000 in Miami. So it's cheaper, which means there's a bigger supply.
So more's coming.
So they're getting it in containers. You know, there's millions of container ships on every coast, every port.
A lot of drugs.
Well, you still get a job in the war on drugs.
You could.
Yeah.
But marijuana, obviously, it's legal in most of America.
Yeah.
So that's probably not being shipped in anymore at the rates it was.
Well, they can get better quality and more quantity down there. So, but you know, they're not bringing in 1 million pounds or 500,000 pounds at a time.
What's your take on federalizing marijuana in the United States?
Well, if it makes money, I really don't care. I don't think you can legalize drugs, just like you can't give everybody a gun to walk around. You know, these people get enough of this wild drug, you know, be it meth or be it crack or whatever. You know, I mean, one of the main bikers that I caught, the first guy, he was absolute drug addict, drunk, crazy, shoots people. Got shot twice with me. And he said, you know, if I knew how bad this crack was, I never would have touched it. And he couldn't put it down. And that's some dangerous stuff.
Wow. Anything else, Kevin, before we sign off?
Do you think that the government looks the other way to keep people employed in the business? I mean, a lot of people work for. This is always a question I kind of have. They're like these drug agencies. You got the DEA, and the FBI has a drug unit, and the sheriff has a drug unit, and probably the Southfield Police has a drug unit, and it seems like maybe it's a lot of overlap. I don't know, but it's a lot of jobs, a lot of people, and I just wonder, you know, with the technology, and you know, we can stop terrorism or slow it down or keep it off our soil. Do you think if we wanted to, we could keep drugs out, or do you think it's just a look the other way thing?
I think you're just keeping the pressure on it and making it harder. Just like if somebody's threatening to kill somebody, you harden the target, and you can't really stop it because they can always pick the time and place and degree of force that they want to act with. But I think you've got to keep the pressure on drug dealers. They'd be out of control, and they get wild and shoot each other, shoot everybody else. And, you know, and most of these agencies, like, you know, like Oakland County, usually they have some local guys working with them and an exchange of information, and it all helps. But it's not, they don't come up with just drug crimes. They come up with everything related to drug crimes, B&Es, murders, kidnappings, car thieves, you know, they're...
I guess if there's a demand, there's always going to be a way, someone willing to figure out how to feed the demand.
Yeah, it's easy money, you know.
Well, I appreciate you coming in today, Ned. I'm looking forward to listening to your podcast when it's out, and I'm glad that you're finally getting a nice long series that you're able to tell the stories. The interviews are going to be fascinating. I appreciate you sharing your story with us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And if any listeners out there need some badass to protect you in another country or even on the streets of Detroit.
Or Southfield.
Right.
LSS Consulting.
LSS Consulting, Ned Timmons. And we'll put his information in our show notes. But thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching another episode of Open Mic with Kevin Dietz and Ned Timmons from LSS Consulting. We had a fascinating conversation. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please share it, subscribe, like, and stay tuned for another episode coming up real soon. Thanks.